Hello everyone, I'm Michael Newkirk. Welcome to TechFest. We hope you've enjoyed the speakers so far. They've all been pretty great, and I'll try to keep up that sentiment there. So today I will be talking to you about what recruiters and hiring managers look for in candidates. And I will be referring to my notes so I don't go down some rabbit hole. So we'll be talking about a few things today. We'll be kind of giving an IT recruitment overview. We'll talk a little bit about resumes. We'll talk about interviewing. And then at the end, we'll just kind of talk about some general key points and some actionable steps you guys can take on your resume, your LinkedIn profiles, interviewing, that type of thing. Also, please, as I'm talking, please feel free to jump in, ask any questions, challenge me, whatever you want to do. I appreciate that. First, we'll start with kind of I just want to, real briefly, what is IT recruitment? It's basically three things at its core. It's the sourcing, screening, and selecting of candidates. Sourcing is wading through resumes, wading through applicants for people that you feel like might be a fit for that position, right? The screening process is just what it sounds like. So we talk to people, we interview them, we technically assess, we meet them, that type of thing. And then obviously the selecting of candidates is kind of twofold, right? It's the selecting of a candidate that we send on to interview with our client, whether that be from an agency perspective or from an internal recruiting perspective. And then, actually the selection process goes beyond that and to who actually gets the position that they're interviewing for. So I think we'll start with, before we talk about what recruiters look for, let's talk a little bit about what hiring managers look for and the process of that and the collaboration that goes into it. As a recruiter, collaboration with the client hire manager is critical. A good recruiter should have an understanding of his client's business, but also have a deep understanding of the initiatives of that client, whether it be industry driven or specific to that particular company, and then how each position fits into that business strategy. Obviously, we need to understand the technical aspects of that job, but as the guys before me talked about, people want to know about what their work impacts, right? It's not just about banging out code or building a server, right? They want to know what the bigger impact, what does my work contribute to? And so a good recruiter, whether internal or agency, should be able to speak to that. And that's important because that's what retains top talent, right? And we'll talk more about that later on. Let's see. So, like I said, it all starts with the recruiter, whether it be internal, collaborating with that hiring manager to understand the technical requirements of the role, but also to understand the pain, budget, and decision-making process for that hire. The requirements involved from the hiring manager not only describe, the collaboration from the hiring manager not only describe, what the job entails, but as I mentioned, to be involved in that selection process, providing feedback on candidates submitted and interviews performed. So that's big in my world, right? And I know this is more about the job seeker, but the recruiter world, and I know there's probably some hiring managers out here, that feedback is critical. We truly do use that, and ultimately that saves everyone time. It helps the recruiter streamline what they're looking for, streamline those searches, weed candidates out that we know that's not a good fit, submit to that hiring manager less unqualified or uninterested candidates, and also, talk to candidates about relevant jobs, positions that they're actually interested in. And so, the better our understanding of all that stuff and the better the feedback and the collaboration from those hiring managers allows all that to happen much easier. Let's see. Oh, also, by the way, just kind of common decency. I'm sure many of you have interviewed for companies in this room, and you interview and you think it went great, and then you never hear anything, right? That's not only, in my view, unprofessional, but it's just kind of mean, right? I mean, even if the feedback is negative, share the feedback. The recruiters will share that. Whether it's accurate or not, you learn from it, you grow from it, right? But just to kind of leave somebody hanging, I just feel like it's, my grandmother would say, bad manners. I think I'm a few slides back here. Get my end. Okay, so not only is the understanding of the position and the recruiting team critical, but we need to know top technical skills needed. We need to know those budget requirements. We need to know the interview and decision-making process. And that constant communication plays into that, right? So, and to go back on the feedback thing, it needs to be timely, right? I mean, so there's a war for talent going on, right? And a lot of the companies are out there searching for very similar individuals. And if that feedback starts to drop off, it starts to wane, job seekers kind of lose interest, right? They have other things going on, they'll move on. And so, all of this is important from a job seeker perspective, if you're trying to hire someone. So, I just wanted to mention that, at the top of, for you hiring managers out there, that is important to provide that feedback in a timely fashion, that type of thing. Let's see. Also, too, it's not on here. I think we might have skipped my slides here. But some of the things that recruiters look for, sorry about that. There we go. Okay. Some of the things that, moving into what recruiters look for, and the next few items I discussed, they vary in order. So, the first one that we'll talk about is industry experience. Frankly, sometimes the job is more about the technology stack or the function to be performed, and the industry experience matters less. Sometimes industry experience does matter and is important. And I will tell you this, each industry, each business vertical thinks they're different. Healthcare thinks they're special, finance thinks they're special, government thinks they're special, and they are in some ways. It could come down to compliance issues or federal regulations or things like that. But a lot of times, the IT work being done is just that. It's the same work. It just, some of the verbiage has changed, but a lot of the same actions are being taken place in multiple verticals, right? So the reason that I bring that up is, keywords, and we'll talk a lot about keywords today on resumes. They'll come into play here. And so, like I said, we'll talk about that kind of moving forward. So that industry experience, if you like an industry that you're in, stay in it. Stay within that vertical. It will provide dividends to you, I think, down the road. But also don't be afraid to branch out because, like I said, that technical work that's being done does translate. Just kind of something to think about. Cultural fit. I would argue that cultural fit is almost as important as technical fit, mainly because people want to work with people that they like or that they can at least tolerate, that fit into the team, that aren't going to cause disruptions or be a bad apple, right? So, as a job seeker, I think you need to think about that. What culture do you want to be involved in, right? If you're someone that likes to be a lone wolf and work alone, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too, I'm always a slide off. Be honest with yourself about that. Be honest with your recruiters that you're working with about that. Those recruiters should know the culture of those companies. And so, and like I said, that is, I would say that hiring managers make a hiring decision based on cultural fit almost as much as they do a technical fit on that skill set stack or on that technical stack, right? That's something you can train. Can't always train the cultural fit part. All right, so another thing, and again, these aren't in any particular order. They will change by hiring manager, the company, what the need is, what the position is at the time, right? But teamwork. So, gone are the days where the IT worker is stuck in a corner someplace, banging out code alone and nobody talks to them. Gone are the days where the engineer is alone in a closet, building servers or building networks or whatever it is, right? More and more positions call for the IT worker, regardless of level, to interact with other IT teams and even business units, units outside of IT, accounting, HR, you name it. So, somebody that can work in cross-functional teams and can communicate with others is critical. That's another thing. So problem-solving skills is the next one. Yeah, there we go. If you're an IT role and technology is something that you're interested in, this is probably a strong suit. IT solves problems, right? So be able to speak to not only the technologies that you've worked with, but what problem was solved, how it affected the overall business outcomes. Also be aware that not all problems have one way to solve, right? Scenarios are different, and in other instances where this is another instance where teamwork can be important. You don't want to go in on an interview or as you start kind of talking about the whole job search process here as a know-it-all. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Plus, you're not always right, and there are more than one ways to do things. So just something to think about, and this is really kind of more of an interview, but this is true when talking to a recruiter or talking to a hiring manager, right? You want to become and seem, and hopefully you are, somewhat flexible, right? And so, like I said, be prepared to talk about problems solved by your work, whether they're technical in business, and how you came to those resolutions, and what may have been different about yours and the team's approach. You might want to have, again, on the interview side, be able to speak to, times where you had an idea of how to do something, somebody else on the team had had another idea, and you had to work with those people to get the job done, right? Education and certifications. I've always felt funny saying this. Formal education. In the past, I would probably tell you something like, doesn't matter as much. IT jobs and hiring managers are really more interested in what you've done, where you've done it, what tools you use, and how long you did it, right? I will say that is changing. As IT, and it's already been this way, has become more mainstream and more people are studying this stuff in school. It used to be where a lot of times the IT worker was the person who showed some sort of technical aptitude. They had another job, somebody grabbed them, and now they're in the IT department. Those days aren't as prevalent as they used to be, right? So, the formal education, the degrees are important. They may not... They may not be essential to the job, but they may win it out for you, right? If it's between you and another candidate that doesn't have the CIS degree, that might be what gets you over that hiring hump. Certifications. Now, I treat certifications a little bit differently. I think they are important. I think that they are a differentiator for you. Not all certifications, some are watered down, and we can talk about that later if you'd like, but a lot of those certifications are... Not only does it show that you've studied that topic, right, but they are kind of a feather in your hat to say, this is what I do. I study this. I actually care about it. And we'll talk about kind of the passion around some of this. But, a lot of the certifications are a lot of times they're actually needed. I'll have hiring managers say, hey, I have to have this person certified in whatever, right? So just something to think about as you're out there looking for jobs, or if you're thinking about making a move, you don't have that certification that you've been thinking about, I would encourage you to look at it, do some research, and maybe a good idea to jump on that. Okay, now we're going to get to what recruiters look for in resumes. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? A resume needs to be detailed enough where that speaks to what you've done, tools you've used, impact you've made, how your work has affected business outcomes, those types of things. but it needs to do it in a way that doesn't give away too much, right? Your whole goal of that resume is to get the interview, right? And then that way, the interview sets you up to have a deeper conversation, to field questions. What you don't want to do is be so detailed on that resume that it's 10 pages and turns into a book, because nobody wants to see that, right? You want to be able to, where it outlines, give somebody a good idea of what you've been doing, but then that drives the need to say, okay, is this my candidate or not, right? And it allows you to be you, sell them on you, expound on that experience, that type of thing. Your resume is a living document. You've probably heard this before. I think you should update it regularly, especially as you get new skills, new certifications, new degrees, that type of thing. You want to get that on there. And, you know, as things become dated from a technical perspective or from a year perspective, you want to drop that off, right? And I also would encourage you to create a general template, right? You probably know this. Have a general resume template, and then as a living document, you tailor that to go after those specific jobs that you're looking for, right? Or that you're interested in and applying. Not saying to embellish or lie, obviously, but you angle that resume and your experience and background towards that position. You know, a few bullet points, and it's not up here, and I wish that it was, but you know, you want to really represent the last 10 to 15 years of what you've been doing on your resume, right? Beyond that, it becomes a little watered down. Now, if you've done something that you're really super proud of or that you think is applicable, you could add it, but I wouldn't add a bunch. You know, maybe you add a time, you know, a date that you were there, the company you were there, and maybe your title, something like that. But you really want to focus on that 10 to 15 years. You want to develop accomplished statements. Again, I talk a lot about on resumes, it's about what you've done, what problem you've solved, and how you affected the business, right? That I think will set you out, because at the end of the day, and when we're doing IT work, we're engineering, we're developing, we're doing all the things, but really we're trying to drive a business, we're trying to solve problems, and I think that's what really hiring managers are looking for in candidates. Again, you know, the technical stacks, right? They're easier to train. There's more people out there that have worked with these tools, but what did they accomplish? Did they fix anything? Are things better now that they're gone and they've done that?
I have a quick question, Michael.
Yeah.
What's the impact of AI been for new resumes coming in? You know, as people are looking at, you know, job opportunities and they say, hey, ChatGPT, generate me a resume for XYZ.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that's still developing. And what I'll say is, no, this is the greatest story, but I had a client about a week ago tell me that their biggest challenge in filling a position was they felt like they were getting AI generated resumes. So look, AI is a great tool. I would use it to help build your resume, but you got to manage that, right? You can't let that AI tool drive and build something that's not correct. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Joe. I'm one of Michael's team members. So I think AI is a fantastic tool for resumes. It's wonderful. Like how many times? Like a lot of times people get in their career, they haven't written a resume in 10 years, even though they've looked at them on a daily basis. Like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Okay, it's great from a template standpoint. Number one, you always have to be able to talk about whatever is on your resume. That is free game to be asked about. You say that you had done AI development, you know LLM, you better be able to talk about it, right? So I was actually talking to a hiring manager on the way up here, and he actually specifically asked that question. And you know, I was like, listen, like I don't think there's anything wrong with people using AI to help them generate their resume, but whatever question that you have about that resume is fair game, and they need to be able to speak about it. So that's where plagiarism, you know, plays in. I mean, it's like university, the term papers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, you can customize it and make it yours, and I mean that's your resume. You got to be able to talk about it.
So do you guys in your organization do that extra layer of screening? Because, you know, like, for example, what I've ran into is I can go go out and take snippets out of a resume and have my team go out and Google that, and
Yep.
they'll go find that resume.
Yep.
We'll find a lot of things. Then you start seeing consistent entries, even down to the company that someone supposedly worked at. You're like, oh, wait a minute. You know?
Right.
So are you guys doing that from a screening perspective to make sure by the time you get to the company, they're not?
Absolutely, and you know, that is a part of the recruiter function, right? And I'll talk about recruiting in a minute. If you're working with a good recruiter, part of that screening process that I've talked about is, you know, to validate that resume. I'm going to interview you just like or as close to that hiring manager that I'm planning to submit you to, right? And so part of that is I'm going to walk down your job, your career. What'd you do here? What are the tools you worked with? What was your role? And I'm going to try to validate that. Not to mention, there are reference checks, right? Probably going to ask you for references. And specifically, if I'm looking for a specific technology or a function that you've done, I'm really going to dig into that. So to Joe's point, if you haven't done it, we're going to catch it, right? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more too, but you know, most recruiters, we're not technical, right? We know some questions to ask, we can dig in, but a lot of what we do is based on experience and gut, right? So we can talk to you and you can kind of figure out by tone, how this person acts, inflection, body language, all these things, right? Are they telling me the truth or not? And even if they do snow me, the you know, brand new non-technical recruiter, it's probably going to come fleshed out in the client interview, right? And if you get by that, it's certainly going to come out in the job if you do get the job. So, you know, I would say avoid all of that. IT is a pretty small community. It's even smaller around Louisville, right? You know, we all kind of know each other, you know. So if you get the reputation of this guy or gal has lied on their resume, it'll get out. And if you send your resume to KFC and that's kind of what's happened to you, they're not going to hire you. And that's going to stick, right? So you can't just wash that away in most cases.
So the one thing I would add, because I think we did a survey around the room informal earlier, and we found there's a lot of senior, you know, leaders or hiring managers, is that one, probably during your screening process, if you're not seeing my face during the screening, and when we get to the interview, you know, usually the recruiter will stay on the call just to validate it is the one who we screen.
Yeah.
Because we've seen instances of where people have been hired, and is it Joe?
Yes.
Joe showed up to do the work. Or, even worse, Dewan showed up to do the work, but he's got a Zoom session open all day. Because Joe is in India, he's actually the one that has the skill, right? So,
That
this is
absolutely.
a warning to all of you.
That absolutely does happen, and has happened for years. You know, AI might even, you know, encourage that some.
There are certain scenarios that is way more prevalent.
It's kind of crazy, yeah. This is great. I appreciate the questions. I'm so much better at answering questions than I am going through this, right? So LinkedIn real quick, and I won't talk about LinkedIn a whole bunch, but I will give you some different LinkedIn. So, and this is the about section of that LinkedIn profile. You have an about section up there. You want that section to be about who you are or what you want to be or how you want to be seen in the professional world, right? And the reason I bring that up is because recruiters do look at that, and recruiters aren't great of creating career path, if you will, meaning we're typically recruiting for the job on the deck. We need you to come in and do this job today, right? There's not a whole lot of you know, runway to kind of learn things, right? But you, as the job seeker, are looking for jobs that you can do, right? But you can also come out of there with better skills, more advanced, right? So that career path piece. So that section actually kind of helps with that. And then, you know, and I'll talk about keywords again too, but also in LinkedIn while we're there, the top skills section is a keyword-driven section. Now, LinkedIn changes how they place their algorithms from time to time. But right now, I believe that is what they use. So when recruiters type in keywords within LinkedIn, that's the section that it hits. And so in that section, there'll be drop downs, right, of keywords that you want to include. Use all that they'll give you, right? Because you use all that they'll give you, right? Because that'll allow you to show up in more searches. You'll have more conversations lead to more interviews lead to offers, right? Anything?
And the only thing I'd add on that is, again, it's fair game. You got it on that section, you need to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah, don't BS it, right?
Yeah.
Be honest.
But include, especially newer technology, right? So a lot of times when companies come to us, we're looking to implement something, right? So some type of newer technology that you work with, implementing in your current environment, whatever it may be, make sure that you list those things. That's why when Michael was talking about, updating your resume on a consistent basis, why it's so important. Because a lot of times you forget that, we implemented Snowflake in this project, or we did, X, Y, Z, right? Just, those simple notes and updates, it goes a long way. It keeps you relevant. Like if you, not that social media is everything or LinkedIn is everything, but as you are updating your profile, that does in their whatever crazy algorithm, it does bring you to the top of feeds and makes you, it kind of almost boosts your status on the site, right? So there's value if you're trying to build your career. You're building, you're building that reputation as well. So it kind of, as you're going along, you're building your reputation, being able to talk about projects, building up, citing how your profile, how you're executing on projects and all that kind of stuff. It puts you in a different posture than maybe other candidates.
Yeah,
So just another good.
I think that dovetails beautifully into what Michael said as well, right? It's great to have all that technical stuff, but if you're going after how do I move my career forward, and I want to go from a technical resource to more of a managerial C-suite executive, now I start listening to things I've accomplished, I've been in leadership.
That's a great point. That's
And
exactly it.
I know Java and I know SQL and I remove all that other stuff, but I talk about what the accomplishments are for being an executive.
You said that way better than I tried to. That's exactly it. Absolutely. Yep. Anything else? Yeah.
Michael, Alejandro Franco with the American Free Guide for the Blind. We've seen, and we're careful to use the AI portion for HR because we interview and give jobs to people in the blindness community, and sometimes AI weeds them out. And for us, it's like whoever did the programming right on the solution, it'll look for some things if you're doing a video camera, and all of a sudden your eyes are closed. So it'll weed you out. That's what we see in our environment. Yes, AI is really good, but also we have learned that it doesn't forget if somebody has a deficiency or somebody has blindness.
Yeah.
Hey, sir,
Yes.
can we connect after this? Because I would love to find out how we can partner to help, persons that we want to support that are in your community, how we could best partner together on that. I'm really intrigued by that.
Yeah, to be frank, I haven't run into that, right? And so, the only thing I would say is I know this is an AI-driven conference tomorrow, be careful. We're all still trying to figure it out to some degree, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, how to manage it, all the things, right? So, yeah, appreciate that.
If I might add, I'm seeing more companies doing video-based
Mhm.
recruit or interviewing prior to you speaking to a person. So more and more are going to that kind of format.
Absolutely.
And helping people prepare for that would be key.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about that video interview here in just a little bit too. That'll play into that some. Yeah, you're exactly right. Back to the resume. Any other questions? Back to the resume a little bit. So, again, I'll say that keywords, recruiters live and die by them. Non-technical, we're looking for the hiring manager tells us some few words. He needs these words, right? We go out and try to find those words. So we just need to make sure that those are on, and they're in the correct places and they're prevalent on those resumes and LinkedIn profiles. On the resume, typically people have a professional summary. I will tell you that as a recruiter of over 20 years, I don't look at them. Hiring managers may have a different perspective on that. I would encourage you to do them. You don't want it to be a reason that you don't get an interview or get noticed, right? It's because you didn't, there's a perception you didn't take the time to make the professional summary. I just wouldn't maybe put a whole ton of time into it. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Relevant keywords. So again, we've talked about this a bunch. Boolean searches and bot-driven algorithms, really drive those resume searches. Recruiters use applicant tracking systems that use those same algorithms, as we're doing our searches and resumes and that type of thing. So again, super important there. I wouldn't list any technology that you've not touched. Don't list the technology that you want to do, right? I mean, I guess you could maybe in your profile section, but again, to Joe's point, if you've listed on there in that body of the resume, that is fair game for them to ask you about. And even if it's not relevant to that job, if you put something on there and they find out that you've not worked with it, it's kind of seen as dishonest and it's a reason to discount your candidacy, right? Also, to the counter of that, I wouldn't put technologies on there that you don't want to work with. If early in your career you worked with AS400 and you don't want to hear about AS400 jobs, don't put it on there. Because if you do, I guarantee you will get calls about AS400 roles, even if they were 25 years ago, right? So just something there. And you want to show up in relevant searches, right? And the same as with the LinkedIn profile. Make sure that the technology on there and the things you list is true, and don't list things on there that you don't want to do or talk about anymore. Also, too, little off topic, but on LinkedIn, I wanted to also mention that on those LinkedIn profiles, the recommendations are important. You want to ask peers, ideally former management that you've worked for, maybe before you've left, to make recommendations, right? And you want to update them, right? So if your most recent recommendation was a decade ago, you might want to find some newer recommendations, to put on there. I think job seekers and recruiters do pay attention to that. I'm sorry, hiring managers. Probably hiring managers more so than the recruiter. But that is something to kind of keep in mind and not forget about. Key skills and experience. So we've talked about this some. Technical skills are what recruiters are looking for initially via those keyword searches. It's easier to search, technology than it is cultural fit and teamwork and some of the things that we've already talked about. Lost my place here. Also, and we talked about this, so don't oversell. And again, I mentioned this earlier, I got ahead of myself, but if you're talking to recruiters, don't snow them. I mean, you might be able to, but if they're any good, they're going to sniff it out. And if they escalate that screening process, it'll be sniffed out. A lot of times we do technical assessments. We'll have you talk to a like-minded technical professional to vet you, right, technically. And so, you don't want to, I've spoken to candidates that any technology that I brought up, they worked with it. Well, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but how do you have the time to work with all these things? Right? I mean, you've done all the things, right? That just doesn't sound, correct to me. It doesn't sound true, and it's probably not, right? And so if it is, again, be able to tell the story about it. And, you know, the relevant experience, this is a place where the tailoring of the resume comes into play. You have that general template we've talked about, but, you know, if you're targeting a specific job posting that you've seen, tweak your resume to, you know, angle your true background and experience towards that role, right? Um, and be able to speak to it. Kind of moving, oh, relevant work experience.
You have about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll go fast. We'll just kind of jump into, do we want to talk about interviews or market trends? Market trends, okay. There is something I want to say as I'm getting into the right slide about communication, and I think this is really important. You need to be able to tell your story, right? So what recruiters will do is we want to know your background. Okay, so you've got these 5 jobs listed on your resume. We want to know what you did, what your role on the team was, what the impact was, right? We also want to know, was it contract or permanent, right? And if it was a contract job and you were there 6 months, did you successfully finish that contract? No matter what the story is, the recruiters that you're working with, we need to be able to articulate that to the client. If it's a job gap for a year, that may be okay. That doesn't, you know, you don't need to be embarrassed by that. Maybe you took a sabbatical. Maybe it just took you that long. Maybe you went to college, but we need to know that story. And, you know, I get a lot of times where we don't know that story. And it's just, if I don't know the story and if I just send your resume over to my client and you've got a gap for a year, that may not look great only because we don't know the story. Were you locked up? What happened, right? We just kind of need to know what it was, right? So that's what I'll say on the communication. So job market overview. So good news. There are more jobs than people still. You know, there's a fight for top talent out there. So if you're in IT, regardless of the skill sets, what I say, you're in a pretty good place. People are hiring. They need you. Now I will tell you that, you know, while there are more jobs than people, there are more people out there than there used to be, so it's pretty competitive. So, you know, we're looking for value and culture fit, some of the things we've already talked about. I'm trying to be fast. So a lot of the things too that we see more and more, specifically since COVID, right, are remote work, right, that are still very prevalent. There are a lot of remote roles out there. I will tell you that's changing a little. You know, the hybrid scenario seems to be more and more popular, or at least the situation. I'll have hiring managers tell me, hey, they don't need to be here every day. This is a remote job, but I need them to be close enough to where if I need them on site, they can get here in a reasonable amount of time and effort. So if you're in your mindset that I'm only doing remote work, and that some ways it increases your job opportunities, but that also increases your competition, I think you need to change that mindset, at least, you know, be agreeable to being on-site hybrid. That will set yourself up a little bit against some of your competitors. Projects or time between gigs, right? Especially for the contractor worker. It's still healthy. Projects aren't being canceled from my perspective, what I've seen, but they are being kicked down the road some. So maybe a project that was slated for Q2 is now being done in Q4. So I would say prepare a little bit for that longer time between your next gig, right? In that time, continue to educate, continue to train, continue to be involved in the community, things like TECHFEST. I mention that to say the job market is still very healthy in general, and within IT, it just may take you a little longer, so keep your head up about that. I think 17,000 new IT jobs were added in June, so that's a pretty good number. Any questions there? How am I doing, Don? Conclusion. Good luck. No, I don't need that to do the conclusion. Hey, look, the job market it's still good. It's still really good. You know, I think that's true against all skill sets. We'll see. I think AI is an area where we'll continue to see where that drives us, what jobs that may eliminate and which ones that creates. You know, keep your resumes updated, keep them pertinent. You know, work on your interview skills and processes. That's another thing you can do between gigs. If you're working with recruiters, they should be able to take you through mock interviews, things like that. So, just different things like that, to kind of keep your skills fresh.
And then you can give us your closing on working with you. How do they work with you?
Yeah, so,
Joe had a question real quick.
It was just one quick statement. Technology jobs are changing, right? AI in particular has created a lot of efficiencies. We don't, even from a technology standpoint, have to do as many manual tasks, right? The jobs that are being created, and like business analysts, the people that can bridge the technology, manipulate the technology, and implement it into the business, you're seeing so much more demand for that. We're seeing real time how AI is impacting, our society and our economy. It's a very exciting time. We just gotta all understand that, hey, our roles and responsibilities are changing. So, I just wanna add that tidbit. That's, if you can talk about how you partner with business and help them with their technology, you are going to sell yourself as a candidate.
yeah, that's exactly that. Thanks, Joe. So as far as I'm Michael Newkirk. I'm with Patriot Talent. Hopefully this works. You can scan this and it should be able to take you to my LinkedIn profile. If you're having trouble with that, come find me and I've got a business card that I can give you, or we can definitely use the phones and do it that way. So thank you for your time.
Did you have a question?
Oh, did you have a question?